All right, everybody, welcome back to episode 11 of Life Between the Sticks. Cody, we're back in the basement, hanging out.
Oof. In the basement, episode 11.
Never thought you'd make it.
Not to episode 11, no.
Well, after a fun conversation with Trevor over at Aviata Gloves, first interview we've done, some fun clips out there on social. Now it's, just back to business, really here. It's not breaking news anymore. This is out a while ago, but it is official. The United States will be hosting the 2024 Copa America, along with 6 CONCACAF countries participating in it. The U.S., I remember when we did play in the Copa America a few years ago, we got to play some of the South American teams. It's really ramping up here. The 2026 World Cup in North America, now hosting a South American tournament.
Yes.
Thoughts on the U.S. hosting the Copa America and let alone playing against those South American teams?
I think it's going to be great exposure for U.S. soccer, great competition for U.S. soccer, a great opportunity to kind of show where U.S. soccer has been and how far they have come since 10 years ago, 20 years ago, since the World Cup at the end of 2022. I think that there is going to be a lot of exposure, and it's a great opportunity for U.S. soccer to really ramp up ahead of the World Cup.
Yeah, World Cup winners, Lionel Messi's Argentina will be there.
Yes.
Yes. Brazil. Watching them absolutely dazzle at the U20 qualifying right now down there. Uruguay is a good team. Colombia is a good team. Ecuador is a good team. Peru, they fight. It'll be really interesting, I think, to see. I didn't do my homework to see who the other 6 countries are. I'm assuming you can expect Mexico and Canada. They're going to bring the biggest teams that they can.
Absolutely.
But the U.S. really putting everything on pre-World Cup. I mean, there's a lot of positive momentum, I guess you could say, in the United States when it comes to soccer. Apple and the MLS we've talked about hosting this huge international tournament, and then obviously the World Cup in 2026.
Yeah, it's
no pressure, huh?
No, not at all. I think U.S. soccer has come a long way, and they have a long way to go. However, I think these next 4 to 6 years, 2 to 4 to 6 years, will be absolutely massive for the federation, and how they set themselves up to grow over the next 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so moving to England, Leeds have recently sacked Jesse Marsch, an American. He came from RB Salzburg, was in the RB world, had a lot of success there, even played in the Champions League. They were always a tough to beat team, high press, high energy. And what made us bring this up is it's a little bit like, Leeds, you drunk? Like, what you guys doing over there? You just signed a few players in the January transfer market for Jesse Marsch and his style of football, and then you immediately the next game sack him.
Yeah, and it's funny to build off of that. The coach that took over, I believe, was the reserve team coach or the second team coach, and said that the style of play will be pretty much exactly the same, except for a few little intricacies. So it's one of those things where, okay, is this decision really going to change the outcome of their season, or should they have stuck with him?
Well, there's some implicating factors to go into this as well.
Of course.
But, it just goes back to the same thing, the narrative around Chelsea at the beginning of the season. Aubameyang, Koulibaly, Raheem Sterling, all players signed for Thomas Tuchel.
Yeah.
2 weeks into the season, then you sack Thomas Tuchel, and you're left with these players. You could have just sacked them in the summer. Obviously, I think the owners are hopeful that things would change, but to at least, he had a couple weeks to, try to figure it out. We even had a Champions League game with Chelsea. Leeds, it was the next game.
Yeah.
Boom, done.
Yeah. And their excuse was off the back of the last 6 or 7 results. Well, those 6 or 7 results were happening during the transfer window when you were allowing him to go out and sign the players that he wanted to fix the issues that he was seeing in the lineup or seeing in the games or, seeing in the cup games, whatever it might have been, and then you don't give them an opportunity to ride those players and actually work with those players and try to fix the issue.
Yeah, I mean, look, they couldn't play Chelsea enough in his tenure there. He was a bogey side for Chelsea, very frustratingly, but he was 8, 9, and 15 in the Premier League specifically since his arrival last season. Remember, he took over from Marcelo Bielsa, a guy who is highly tactical, very specific style. He had to reverse that, which he did, got a lift out of the players, but it definitely fell flat.
It did.
They hadn't won since November in the Premier League, which, granted, there's a World Cup in there, but that's still a long run to not win.
And I guess when you hear that statistic, that factoid, I think that you can understand the ownership's decision to sack him. However, I just think the timing was a little weird.
For sure. I think that's what everyone's confused about, especially like as Americans, you're like, holy shit, we got the triumvirate there. Tyler Adams,
Brendan Aronson. Weston McKennie.
And then obviously they just signed Weston McKennie on loan from Juventus.
Yeah.
As Americans, the Leeds United States was the nickname we had given them.
Yeah.
My friend had just finally jumped off the Liverpool bandwagon that he was riding and was like, all right, Leeds. I'm like, you mean dirty Leeds? But you had an American coach. You had 3 crucial American players. It was an exciting time. It was a big deal, for American fans, which obviously we are. But again, 30% win rate in all games at Leeds. He had 37 he was in charge of. They only won 11. They drew 10 and they lost 16.
Yeah.
It's just they're only getting points in 21 of those 37.
Yep.
And they are firmly in a relegation battle. I mean,
Yes.
we look at the bottom of the table. They just picked up a point against United post-sacking.
Yep.
The 2-2 draw, which you usually get a lift right afterwards,
Absolutely.
which I want to talk
There's
to you about.
usually a player reaction.
So they immediately get a point, but there's 6 teams all in that relegation zone at the bottom of the Premier League table. So I think Leeds know how important it is. Again, timing, weird. So from your perspective, you've seen managers come and go. How much of a heads up do you guys have? When things are going down, do you guys stop talking or do you start talking? Are you a little bit worried? And then when the manager's sacked and someone else comes in, where does that new jolt of energy come from that we always seen?
Well, I think as results, as training sessions become more and more difficult, obviously there is several conversations that happen amongst the players. There are several conversations that happen amongst, the organization as a whole, trying to address the issues, trying to make changes. However, sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes those solutions don't actually solve the issues.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happens or doesn't happen, you end up with a manager that gets sacked. And from my experience, you don't really have much notice. I can remember during my time in New England, I played for 3 different managers. One of them was fired in the off season, and the other was fired mid-season. And we found out when the news broke
when you
on
showed
social
up
media.
You showed up for training that day.
Yep.
The GM walked in, was like, "Hey, Brad's out.
Yep.
It's just us. We'll give you guys more information later."
Right.
Assistant coaches are taking training,
Yep.
or whoever amongst the staff is still there, because a lot of times
Yeah, a
assistants
lot
go
of
with
times,
the head coach.
the staff will go with the head coach, or the club will ask them to stay on for a period of time just to kind of mitigate the in-between until they are able to hire a new head coach, and he's able to take over.
All right, so manager's fired. You're at the Revs, which is hilarious because I'm wearing the jacket you gave me from the Revs. Shout out New England. I'm an influencer. They can be bought. With that being said, you've got interim manager, someone internally taking charge. You guys are playing Galaxy the next game, hypothetically. It's Kobe Jones, David Beckham, like league leaders, even though they never played together. Like what is it like a weight off your shoulders because it's been so tense inside the dressing room because you know it hasn't gone well? Do you guys feel like the pressure's off where you don't have to play in this like small box stylistically? I mean, can you like make it tangible what it is?
I mean, in my experience, it is a huge weight off of the player's shoulder. Obviously, things are the way that they are for a reason, whether it's the team being run in a certain manner that the players don't agree with, whether it's just the results and the style of play not aligning with how the players want to step out onto the field, and they feel like they're boxed into a certain style and they can't show their freedom. Whatever it may be, it is a massive relief off of the shoulders of the player group. And you know, when you step on the field that next game, it's, in my opinion at least, an opportunity to kind of go out there and showcase, well, that wasn't us. The new coaching staff or the interim head coach has stepped up and said, okay, look, how do you guys want to play? How do you guys want to go out there and address this? They don't usually come in and say, well, we're going to do this, this, and this, because most of the time that's been part of the issue. So they come in and they allow you, the player group, to kind of step up and say, look, we want to try things this way. We want to do this. We want to change this. We want to, maybe change the schedule. Just little factors like that can either lose the locker room or win the locker room over for a head coach, an interim head coach, an assistant manager, whatever it may be. And when you kind of get into these positions of where you've just had a manager sacked, like I've said, it is a huge relief. But it's then an opportunity to kind of go out and show not only yourself, your teammates, and the organization what you guys are actually truly made of, but the rest of the league, the fans that pay money each and every game to come and watch you play and more than likely not agreed with your performances. So, yeah.
Interesting. What are a couple like changes you've seen a manager come in and make right away to maybe like early wins with the team on a morale basis? Because you assume if you're towards the bottom of the table, results are crap, like, everyone's a bit down. I mean, we're talking like pizza party, you guys going paintballing, like what are some of the things?
No, definitely no pizza party, no paintballing. However, one of the changes that happened between Brad Friedel getting fired and the run of, I think the unbeaten run of 11 to I think it was 11 games.
That's rough. That's rough for Brad.
When Bruce took over, one of the smallest changes was, instead of wearing team gear to every meal and on every travel day, you were allowed to wear street clothes. That was one of the changes. And it was as simple as letting people wear what they wanted to wear on the plane and what they wanted to wear to team meals. The only team meal that you had to be wearing Revolution branded gear was to pre-match, and that was what you wore to the game as a team.
Yeah.
That was one of the small changes.
Interesting.
Yep.
And otherwise, you guys felt like it was just a little restrictive when it was 100% nonstop. Like, hey, Kit man, I need another.
Yeah, everybody needs to wear the same thing. You wear the same thing 2 to 3 days a week when you're traveling. You're wearing it to the same. You're wearing the same things to meals. It becomes a little repetitive, and I think just that slight change for us at the Revolution at the time was just a small tweak that kind of turned the dial 1 degree. And
did you, for travel, we should clarify, this is back in the days of non-chartered flights.
Correct.
So did you guys try to dress a little incognito to draw less attention to yourselves that professional athletes are on this Delta flight with
No,
the
we
family of four?
we were all wearing Revolution branded gear.
That's what I'm saying. You guys liked the opportunity to not wear that.
Correct.
So that you could be a little bit more incognito.
Correct.
Maybe like, you just hear the Landon Donovan with the hat so far down over his face that no one would recognize him, hopefully.
Yes.
You guys just try to blend in.
Exactly.
You guys are going through TSA.
Going through TSA. Some guys have TSA pre-check. Some guys don't. Because it is if you want to pay for it at that time, that's what it was. If you want to pay for your TSA pre-check.
Did you?
Yes, I did. I didn't want to stay at Boston Logan. Those lines are ridiculous.
Hey, I've had it. So like I'm on the same page. It's just again like seeing that what it was your reality.
Yep.
Heaven forbid the Kansas City away day.
The amount of times I think one of my old teammates, I think it was London Woodbury, he got asked if we were a high school basketball team.
Oof.
And he was like, I think his response was pretty like blunt and abrupt back. And it was, do I look like an 18-year-old basketball player? Do I look 18 years old to you? I
hope he had a beard.
No, he didn't. He had a baby face, and that's why I think the lady
They're like, yeah, we're fundraising.
at the time said that to him. However,
would you like to buy this candy bar to help me fundraise for my travel?
Right, yeah.
Worst
Shout
airport,
out to London Woodbury, by the way. What a guy.
Worst airport has to be Kansas City. They just get a brand new one, but I mean...
Columbus is pretty bad.
I mean, every three
in
gates
terms
has
of
its
size.
own TSA.
That's true, but in terms of size and difficulty to travel to, Columbus is tough because a lot of major cities don't fly directly into Columbus.
Oh, stop.
So you had to do
Chicago.
You had to fly to Chicago, and
Philly.
Then, you had to do a connection. Yep.
I wonder if that should be
That was tough.
a prerequisite before you get an MLS franchise in
That
your
was tough.
city.
That was very tough.
All right. One of the mitigating factors I talked about earlier, back to Leeds United and Jesse Marsch's sacking, credit to World Soccer Talk. I'd known about this, but I hadn't seen anyone else bring this up. If you didn't know, the 49ers, they have a significant ownership stake in Leeds.
I actually did know that. I'd forgotten about it.
It's been building since they were in the championship.
Yes.
It was very small. Because if you don't know, the 49ers are very data-driven. And at the time, Leeds has a very specific player profile. They met, and they're kind of like, they had this Italian owner at Leeds, and somehow they got connected, and they're like, our approach to this is actually pretty similar.
Very similar, yeah.
Maybe let's talk more. And 49ers have very aggressively increased their stake. So what needs to happen is that Leeds must stay in the Premier League in order for the 49ers takeover to be completed by January 2024. So from the owner of Leeds, him getting a big payday, a big buyout. I don't know if 49ers go to 51% or if it's like a 60, 70, 80. Either way, they will be the majority owners with complete takeover by 2024. But Leeds have to be in the Premier League.
Interesting.
That is a ton of money that we're talking about.
Yeah, it is. Because the 49ers owners are very, very wealthy.
Insert any NFL franchise owner.
This is true.
It's one of like the only appreciating things in the world is an NFL franchise. So if you get in, you are cooking.
That said, is the Jacksonville Jaguars ownership group an owner?
Fulham.
Is it Fulham? Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. Interesting.
He's the one that had the Michael Jackson statue outside the stadium for a hot second. Didn't last long. Who else? Obviously, Arsenal, right? LA Rams staying cronky.
Oh, yeah.
Fenway Sports Group and whatever.
In Liverpool.
Which they're trying to exit.
Yeah, I mean, right now, I don't really blame them.
Do the Glazers own a football team? They're
I don't
Florida
know if
people.
I don't know if the Glazers
they
own
probably do.
an NFL team.
They probably do. Anyways, Man United also up for sale.
Yeah.
Sounds like Qatari Sports Investment Group is looking at them.
Yeah, but then you look domestically, you see the Wilf family owns part of, which is the Vikings owners, owns part of Orlando City, I believe now. They were invested in Nashville, but I think they sold their shares and bought into Orlando. I think there's one or two others domestically as well.
Well, obviously the Crafts, in New England.
Yeah, the Crafts, of course, with the Revolution.
I think there's a lot of overlap. Seattle Sounders, Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah. I don't know about ownership group, though. I know that
they share. They used to be together.
Yeah.
What about
they
Atlanta?
share the stadium. Yeah.
I think they're pretty tightly knit, right? The Falcons and Atlanta United.
Yeah. Who's the owner of... Why am I blanking?
Might as well be Mercedes-Benz Arena, as far as I know.
No, it's the owner of Home Depot.
Oh, well.
Seriously?
I don't know.
Oh, my God. Arthur Blank, the Blank family.
There you go.
Yep, they own both. He owns both.
I'm sure there's a lot of overlap. Like, if you own one sports franchise, you have a lot of the infrastructure and marketing, grassroots stuff set up. It's easy to get the other one.
Absolutely.
Baseball, Todd Bowley, Chelsea.
Yeah.
That seems to be going well, I think. Tactical manager put out there, Brendan Aaronson's minutes are gonna tank with Jesse Marsch gone, unfortunately. This, again, new manager, no idea what's going to happen, but tactical manager knows the U.S. game very well. I've been really enjoying following them lately. I trust if he says I should assume it's a he, but Brendan Aaronson's minutes are going to go down. It sounds like a little bit of a teacher's pet in that sense.
Yeah.
Marsch wanted him to do well, gave him extra opportunities to do well. The next manager might not.
Yeah, but that happens. I think that happens at every club. A manager comes in, has 2 or 3 favorite players, and those players fall out of favor when a new manager comes in. I've seen that happen. That's happened to me. It's part of the game, and unfortunately, Brendan Aaronson is in that situation. I hope that he is able to show this new interim manager. I assume it's an interim manager. Yeah. That he is more than capable of playing for Leeds and playing at that level. However, he was not in the starting lineup against Man United, and I don't know if he came off the bench or not.
I don't know. You need to get the Foot Mob app on here,
and
I can help you out.
No.
I came completely unprepared. But you know who was on the pitch? Weston McKennie.
He started, and I believe played 60 minutes.
So U.S. men's national team only, another great follow if you're not. Here's a nice little reference between the money and Juventus. Serie A, European, glorified team with unbelievable history. The buy option in Weston McKennie's contract will automatically be triggered if Leeds avoid relegation, big if, and he makes 10 appearances this season. He's got 1 in the bucket. His salary will increase from 3.2 million euros a season at Juve to well over 4 million at Leeds per La Gazzetta dello Sport.
Interesting.
A relegation-stricken team versus Juventus, who also just got about a 15-point penalty for cooking the books.
Yeah.
Again, a Leeds can pay more than a Juventus. But my question is, do you think he maybe took a lower contract going from Schalke to Juventus just to make that big European move?
I think he might have.
He probably wasn't making that much at Schalke.
No.
In comparison.
No, he probably wasn't making that much at Schalke, especially not having been the household name that I think he currently kind of is, especially in the United States. That said, it was kind of a shock move, in my opinion, when he went from Juventus to Leeds. However, the Premier League is bigger than the Italian Serie A, and
he has buddies.
He has,
I'm sure Jesse promised him the world.
Yes, exactly. There were, I would assume, a lot of promises made. Obviously, the relationship between him, Brendan Aronson, and Tyler Adams played a part in him deciding to go to Leeds, because I can guarantee you right now, Leeds was not the only choice he had to leave Juventus.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's a little bit of a hefty price tag for a team that is currently in a pretty gnarly relegation battle.
Yeah, and the other thing for him is he was like, look, I get a pretty low risk half a season in the Premier League. Let's say
Playing games.
Let's see it doesn't go well for Leeds, but I've proven myself that I can play week in, week out in the Premier League. Someone's gonna pick him up.
Yeah, a
You know,
team
we've
coming
seen-
up, maybe a team that just stays up,
Yeah.
or he could transfer somewhere back into Germany, who liked his performance. Who saw him playing in the Premier League every
Goes
week.
back to Juventus, you know?
Or yeah, exactly.
Who are in trouble and are gonna have to make some changes. He might
Yeah.
have. Why don't you guys smile when you get a new transfer photo? Dude looks miserable.
Oh,
to
I
me
would
at
be
Leeds.
smiling if I was making 3.2 million euros. I'd be smiling.
Weston. Obviously, like I said, we were joking around calling it Leeds United States of America. There's some good edits with Tyler, Brendan, and Weston, obviously, that have been making the rounds. Anytime you get to play with international teammates, I'm sure that's a huge plus, especially Tyler and Weston are anchors in that midfield. The more they can get together, the better.
In my opinion, I think if they are playing together week in and week out, and say Weston does stay at Leeds because they stay up, that only helps the United States going into Copa America and going into all the qualification games leading up to Copa America and, obviously the 2026 World Cup.
Yeah, so 3 Americans, no manager anymore. But Raj Bennett from Men in Blazers did say the record for Americans on one club is 5, which was at Fulham.
Yes.
Americans have a massive history in Fulham, obviously.
Yes, they do.
2007-2008 season, they had Clint Dempsey, Carlos Bocanegra, Brian McBride, Casey Keller, and Eddie Johnson. 3 other teams have had 3 at one point. Most recently, 2012-2013, Stoke City.
Yes.
Jeff Cameron, Breck Shea, Maurice Adu.
And I would even go as far as
Shout
to
out Paul
say,
Carr for pulling the stats.
I would even go so far as to say that Juan Agudelo was a Stoke City player at that time, however, never played for Stoke because he couldn't get a work visa.
Breck Shea was at Stoke.
Yes. Yes,
Oof.
he was.
Interesting.
So,
And Maurice Adu making the rounds. He was in Scotland a long time.
he was with Rangers.
Yeah. Eddie Johnson, I completely forgot. I mean, Brian McBride has the bar at Fulham Stadium.
Yes, he does.
Everyone loves Deuce. Bocanegra's well
Everybody
thought of
loves
there.
Deuce.
Casey Keller, he made his rounds throughout the Premier League. I mean, him
did.
and Friedel, obviously
They
long-time
both did,
Premier League goalkeepers.
I think Friedel still holds the record for most appearances by a goalkeeper.
It's close.
Or most consecutive appearances by a goalkeeper.
The dude played till he was practically 40.
Yeah, he did.
He was at Tottenham right until the end. Kept saying how yoga saved his career and all this stuff, but not a lot of at the end. But yeah, he had an unbelievable amount of Premier League appearances. He's
he
up
did.
there amongst
I
the
want to
top.
say it was some 500 consecutive and maybe 800 total. If my memory serves
how
me
many
right.
appearances in consecutive seasons too?
Yeah.
Well,
I
bet
think he went 400 or 500 just
Wow.
consecutive. He
I
didn't
think
miss a
you're
game.
right. Villa.
Yeah. Part of it was at Blackburn. A chunk
That's
of
right.
it was at
He
Blackburn.
did a big stint at Blackburn. That's right. So yeah. Anyways, Leeds sacking. Jesse Marsch out, immediately went into the U.S. men's national team job. Bucket. Just don't think that that's necessary right now. But this does affect it. So my question to you, Mr. Dropper, is how long do we wait?
To hire a new national team coach?
Well, is the investigation done? I mean, everyone left.
Nobody's heard
McBride
anything.
left.
Yeah, McBride left.
Who went to PSV?
Oh,
Ernie Stewart.
Oh,
He left.
Yeah, Ernie Stewart.
And granted, everyone's like, no, this was scheduled. This was planned. Yeah, sure. Okay. But I don't think we've gotten a verdict on Greg Berhalter
I
on
don't
the
think
investigation.
we have. I don't think we have.
So-
And I don't know when we will. And even when we do, is it something that U.S. Soccer wants to
Make a big deal about?
not make a big deal about, but put themselves in a situation where people are criticizing them for bringing him back?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it going to be the easy decision to just let him go,
Yeah.
move on, it is early enough in the cycle to bring in a new manager and allow him to build for the next World Cup and allow him to use the Copa America as an opportunity to do that.
Yeah. Well, and you say, hey, you've got essentially 18 months, right? You probably
Yeah.
come in this summer because I don't think there's any FIFA dates between now and the summer.
Right.
Probably not. I mean,
No,
after a World
I
Cup,
don't think so.
and you had your January camp. So let's say you go to the summer, you're like, all right, you got 18 months, you got a Copa America. Show us that you can prep a team, assemble a squad, and compete in a tournament.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a bloodbath of a tournament, but hey,
It is.
You gotta,
it's going to be tough. It's
you
gonna
gotta,
be a
you
tough
gotta,
run, but
you gotta measure up against the teams at some point. Like,
Yeah.
you want to win the World Cup, you would have had to play Argentina and France. Like,
Yeah.
it
Absolutely.
happens, you know.
for sure.
All right. Well, I want to take a quick break. You've got Motivate back on, a big-time
Yes.
friend of the pod here, and you've got what with you?
I have got Motivate Sleep. Motivate Sleep helps promote restful sleep, it boosts your metabolism, and it accelerates your fat loss overnight. It is actually one of my wife and I's favorite products. The restful sleep is obviously huge, right? As an athlete, sleep is massive for recovery, and personally, the boost in metabolism is beneficial. Helps to keep weight off, maintain weight, or keep weight off, depending on how you use it. And for me, it's, again, one of my favorite products, one of my wife's favorite products.
Interesting. Yeah, I was sick earlier this week, and I took NyQuil, and it took me an hour and a half to get out of bed, and I
Yeah.
was so groggy.
Yep.
And I took that for medicine, but like even just in general, sleep, like so many people have issues with sleep. My wife just got something, so I'm gonna now have to hit you
Try it
guys
out.
up for some of the sleep
Try it
because sometimes it just takes a while to fall asleep. I would say sleep is the most powerful tool for recovery, for weight loss, for cognitive function. If you're not getting good sleep, it's worth a punt. You need to find a solution. Sleep is
Absolutely.
the most powerful tool when it comes to longevity and health. So
Yeah.
Motivate, link will be in the description for this exact product. Cody's code will be in there as well. So check all that out in the description. Motivate, friend of the pod. So with that being said, we've got some updates. I just wanted to call out Sean Johnson. He was pretty much the number 1 goalkeeper free agent this offseason.
Most definitely.
He recently, after a long run with NYCFC, getting to go to the World Cup, announced his new home. He's filling the gap left by Alex Bono after they cleared house.
Yeah, and Quentin Westberg. I think he signed, I would assume, a multi-year deal with Toronto. I would guess that it will be the highest goalkeeper contract in the league. It's very much deserved. I think he's been a mainstay in the league in the last 5 to 10 years. Whether he was the best goalkeeper every year or not, that's for you to decide. But in my opinion, he's been a backbone for New York City, and I think the time for him to move was right, and to get that one last contract or second to last contract and kind of take advantage of what he's been able to build in the league to date is massive, and I'm super happy for him.
What about, Toronto? I mean, they struggled, but then they kind of turned it on at the end of last season, right?
Yeah.
Do I have that
Yeah.
correct?
They
Bob
did.
Bradley there?
Yes, Bob Bradley is there. They signed Insigne and Bernadeschi.
Yep.
And I believe they just signed veteran center back Matt Hedges. So they are really making a push to start this year strong and get back to the glory of where they have been in the past, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago. 5 to 10 years ago, they were one of the best teams in the league. They compete. It was them in Seattle competing for MLS Cup every single year, and I think that Bob Bradley's really making a push to make that happen again.
Yeah. Yeah. They were bottom of the conference.
They were
very down there. So that's why I'm interested to see if this reinvigorates because they have made a lot of changes. You know, sometimes like you just need a change of scenery, right? It's not that people, you know, it's not that Alex is a bad player. He'd been there 5, 6, 7 years, whatever it was. He probably just needs a new stimulus, new environment,
For sure.
a challenge as well. So like I said, I'd be interested to see what Sean brings to that team. You know, if Bob is going to try to play a different style. Really interested to see, but yeah, big money move for him. Obviously, he was the number one goalkeeping free agent.
For sure.
And he got to probably sit back, have some fancy dinners, and let the teams wine and dine him. And he landed in Toronto. So hopefully he's got his passport still.
Yeah, I'm sure he does. Yeah, just an extra stamp for him.
All right. The other thing that you want to talk about, which I found surprising, was the MLS NEXT Pro. And I think this kind of came from the Aviata podcast a little bit, where I was absolutely flabbergasted that you have to share gloves and boots with people on MLS teams, but some of them are on the NEXT Pro team.
Yes.
Some of them are on the MLS NEXT, which is the Academy League. So anyways, the MLS NEXT Pro, if we break this down, is you have MLS.
Yes.
MLS NEXT Pro is the second tier.
Correct.
They're professionals, but it's very much a development league, kind of like
Correct.
minor leagues for baseball.
Yeah, very similar.
And then you have MLS NEXT, which is the youth academies.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
Yes.
Why MLS NEXT Pro? It's newer. We have USL 1 and 2.
Yes.
NASL, I think, is gone.
NASL is gone. You have USL Championship, USL League 1, USL League 2.
So we have 3 divisions.
Yes.
And not only that, you've got this now, which is a closed league. I think it's 21 of the franchises have a team, and then there's one non-MLS team that got granted in.
Yes.
What like, I guess, what's your experience? What's your thoughts on it? Is this a good move that there's more opportunities for pros? Is it bad that it's still all controlled by MLS?
No, I mean, in my opinion, I think it's a great way to continue to grow the league. It will obviously help clubs provide an opportunity to youth players that come through the academy to develop and transition from the academy to the first team, where in the past there has not been that kind of intermediate level, that in between. This is now providing that in between and allowing a lot of young players the opportunity to go to college if they want and then come into MLS NEXT Pro, or to go from the academy MLS Next to MLS NEXT Pro.
Okay, so yes, the idea really here, I actually just sent you a TikTok of the LAFC midfielder. He was, down on his luck. Was it a USL contract for $1,000 a month? He got a call in the pandemic to go to LAFC 2, which is the MLS NEXT Pro. He was there for a handful of weeks, got an opportunity to train with the first team, went well. It was Bob Bradley at the time. Bob's like, hey, I'm signing you to our team. So I would say really big advantage, roster movement, right?
Yeah.
You're in-house, you're connected. Because I think of, sorry, I always go back to Chelsea, but, you think of, if our youth players in the academy are doing well, they can go across to the first team, train to fill out numbers or maybe even get some reps. A lot of the time, these teams are in the same market, but not always, right? Which,
a majority of the time they are, and they're actually at the same facility.
Correct.
Majority of the time.
They have their own schedule. It's regulated. It's funded by the club. So as much as I'm very skeptical of MLS, the more opportunities for development in a professional environment, the better.
Absolutely, because it's something that when I was 15, 16 years old, did not exist. And it is a way for MLS to provide an opportunity to youth players who are good enough to go abroad but want to stay home. Or it's a way for them to keep them in the United States and develop them and transition them into the first team of the market that they're playing in, rather than them deciding to go abroad.
So like I said, 21 founding clubs for 2022. So was last year the first year for this?
Yes.
Okay. 24 league games per club. So, again, highly regulated, which is important from a development standpoint and a training regimen. Then there's an 8-team playoff, a League Cup final. And then there's future international games potentially with cups and leagues.
Yes.
So their big thing is they said, we're committed to accelerating the future of soccer in North America. It also gives more coaching opportunities.
Absolutely.
And the one thing I pulled out, and again, this is my business mindset, not being a professional athlete, is they're going to develop staff as well. How do you run an academy? How do you run a professional team? So now we're going to have more experienced general managers and operators.
100%.
Which I didn't think about. And then also referees.
Player personnel, in terms of like from a club's perspective.
Mm-hmm. Logistics.
Exactly.
Kit men.
Yep.
Kit people.
Not only that, but coaches. And that's one thing that U.S. soccer is, at least in my experience, struggling with. And I know in Vancouver, Ricardo Clark, who was on the first team staff last year as an assistant coach, was transitioned down to the 2 team and is now the head coach of the 2 team, so that he can gain more experience and, really put everything that he was able to accomplish as a player into his coaching, and he can gain more experience coaching and really start to develop the next generation for Vancouver.
For sure. What was it like in Vancouver? How often did you see those guys? How often did you mix with them?
We saw MLS NEXT Pro players every day. They were at the same facility. Their schedule was a little later than ours.
Yeah.
But we saw them every day, whether it was in the gym, on the field, whatever it might have been. And then depending on the week, we trained. A few of their players would come up to help fill numbers. If we had a 3-game week where 2 of the days or 3 of the days were recovery days the day after a game, we would bring MLS NEXT Pro players up to help fill numbers so that the other first team players could get good reps in training.
Okay.
And kind of maintain the same load and get good sessions.
Yeah, for sure. Did anyone make the transition in the middle of the season?
Yeah, so Simon Becker and Ahmed, I can't remember his last name. They just signed him to a first team contract. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll have to come back to that. Sorry.
But 2 players.
2 players made the transition up and actually made their first team debuts last year. So then I believe the rule is that they can come up for 2 appearances before they have to be offered a contract. So they both came up for 2 or 3 games. They both played 2 games, and then they were not able to play again during the season. Actually, it was 3 players.
Oh, there you go. So obviously small, data pool, but opportunities were there.
Absolutely. Absolutely, they were.
You can't go down, though. Like, it's not super fluid, right?
No, it is. So I actually played in a MLS NEXT Pro game with, I think, 3 or 4 other pros.
Okay, so you can use it for minutes.
Yeah, you can use it for minutes. I don't know if there's a regulation on the amount of players that can go down at any one time. However, I played 1 game down there last year. I know Thomas Asal, when he was coming back from his injury, played a couple games. Isaac also played a couple games. So it can be used for minutes.
That sounds, again,
very
good.
Much like a reserve team.
Yeah.
Yeah,
this
and that's
sounds beneficial.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, some of the roster guidelines, which I found very interesting. You can have 35 players, all of whom are eligible for selection at each official match.
So
Bro,
it's like
those
having
benches.
a first time. It's like having a first team. Sorry, first team.
35 players just suited up and sitting on the bench.
I don't know if you can have 35 players.
It says they're eligible. Like,
eligible
you probably got a
for
roster.
selection,
Yeah,
then you have
yeah.
to make a roster. Yeah.
You got 24 roster slots. 1 through 24 may be filled with professional players. These roster slots include international and domestic players and players on loan. 11 of the roster slots, 25 through 35, may be filled with amateur players. There shall be a maximum of 5 MLS Next Youth Academy players per team on the field during an official match. They don't want to make it an academy team, and if they are playing that much, then they want them to make them full pros.
For sure.
A player is eligible to participate, yada, yada. There's some flexibility. There's no salary cap in MLS Next Pro. There's no salary limits on player compensation. There's no minimum, and there's no maximum. There's no age limits for players. You're 14, Freddie, you do balling. You can go play MLS Next Pro. You just cannot have played in college. You have never been signed or recognized as a professional player before, as defined by the NCAA or FIFA. And you currently played for a club, MLS Next Academy, or a team who has a documented affiliation with the club. So some rules in there.
For sure. Some rules and guidelines that clubs have to follow. It can be, I would think it can be quite difficult. But again, you hire more staff and you're able to manage that. I found it interesting last year, circling back to one of the guidelines you just mentioned, there's no player salary cap. So I believe St. Louis was fielding essentially what will be, they were fielding 3 or 4 of their players that they had signed for their first year in MLS in their MLS Next Pro team. So you had, Bundesliga legend Roman Bürki playing in MLS Next Pro last year. And I could be wrong. I think a large portion of his contract was
front loaded. So they, without a salary cap, they paid him like 2.5 years worth of salary that year.
Is that what it was?
Because there's no limits, roughly, right? That way, when they go to MLS this season, he's on a far reduced contract, so it hits less. So they essentially
hits against the cap less.
They prepaid the dude and said, "Hey, we're gonna need you to play in MLS Next Pro, but we got a bag for you." Yeah. So there's definitely some financial gymnastics. For sure, there were done.
Financial gymnastics. That's a good little phrase you got there.
Yeah. There's international roster slots which can be traded, but at the end of the season they revert back to the original club. So
interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And if you're injured, if you have to be out for at least 5 games, so if you get put on an injured list, you're literally ineligible for 5 games. Even if you're healthy after 3 because you had a miracle recovery, you're out for 5. And then that's how you can replace them on the roster with somebody else.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
I did not know that one.
Yep. Do you think a lot of these are just 1-year contracts? They said there's no limit.
No, I do not believe that they are. I know a few of the MLS Next Pro players at Vancouver last year had multi-year deals. Coming out of college, they get drafted by Vancouver in the MLS draft in either the 2nd or the 3rd round. And instead of signing them to first team contracts, they sign them to 2 or 3 year MLS Next Pro contracts, maybe a 2-in-1, so they get a 2-year Next Pro deal and then the option on a first team deal. So no, to answer your question, I do not believe that they are just 1-year deals. There are both. There are 1-year deals, and there are also multi-year deals.
I made the assumption. It says there's no limit, but yes. I'm thinking this is like the old legendary Mexican player Cuauhtemoc Blanco. He would always play anywhere for a good stack. He was like 40 and still playing, doing his little hop.
There's a 50-year-old player in Japan.
Yeah. Is he center back?
I don't know.
Or is he striker?
He's 50 years old, and that is, hey, if you can still hack it at 50 years old at the professional level, you are obviously doing something right. You have found the fountain of youth.
Yeah, Thiago Silva at 38. We're talking, that's another decade beyond that, which is pretty crazy. Anyways, it's really fascinating to learn more about the different opportunities. There he is.
Ali Ahmed.
Shout him out. Anyways, it's more opportunities, more chances. Just to play. Like I said, we'll try to break down MLS rosters at some point.
Yeah.
They're unbelievably confusing with
They are.
allocation money, all the different sides. Like he's a supplemental slot, right? Then there's MLS rosters are crazy complicated. It's much different in England. You're essentially homegrown or you're not homegrown. It's either A or B. Here, it's a whole different thing, but it is good to hear more about the development side and kind of what that has to offer. And that, I know promotion, relegation is a huge kind of discussion here. And like, is it better for the game? At the end of the day, having long-term infrastructure that is slowly but consistently growing really is good for the game here. Right. We just didn't have for a long time a lot of professional opportunities for players to develop. We started with the youth academies. Now we're getting into the reserve teams, and now we're getting into the full teams and expanded rosters. So it's good. I think it is good. Again, and I'm highly skeptical of almost everything that MLS does. So far, from what I'm reading, this seems to be a net positive for the game.
I would agree. I think that it is definitely good for the growth of the game in the United States. It allows youth clubs, it allows youth players to develop and gain the exposure that my generation would not have had or did not have.
Yeah, you ran
10
away
years ago. Yeah, exactly.
You didn't? And did you go to high school?
I did, yes.
All of it?
No, I did not.
So you got lucky. You were in residency in Bradenton, Florida.
Correct.
And then you ran away to your home country, England.
Exactly.
The Dons.
No, Ipswich, the Tractor Boys first.
My bad.
The Tractor Boys, and then I was a Saint, and then I was a Don.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I was a Patriot.
We'll definitely talk through all of that, but yeah, not many players got that kind of luxury to run abroad. Some of us grew up in Iowa, so
that's tough. That's tough.
Anyways, that's it for us. Hope you enjoyed it.
I don't know.
No. Hope you enjoyed it as always. We'll be back with more content. MLS preseason is right around the corner.
MLS season. Preseason is almost done.
Yeah, that is true. MLS season is there. Get your
End
Apple
of February.
TV subscription.
Yeah, sign up.
It's coming fast. Anyways, it from us. Share it with someone. We really appreciate it. Leave us a 5-star review in Spotify if you could. Subscribe on YouTube. And we're pretty funny on TikTok. So, again, I am Motivate, sponsor of the episode. We're out. Have a great one.